All right, you are now live.
Fantastic. Thank you. I'd like to call the meeting to order, and I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we are in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral territory of the Mi'kmaq people. I'd like to also acknowledge the contributions of Africans of Nova Scotia descent to the municipality. For the approval of the minutes of August 23rd, 2023 and November 15th, 2023. Does anyone have any additions or amendments to the meeting?
Sorry to interrupt you, David. We actually aren't going to be approving the minutes at this meeting. I don't know if you have a copy available of the annotated agenda that I sent you yesterday. So since this is a special meeting, we're not approving minutes. There's certain items on the agenda that won't be included in today's meeting, and the approval of minutes is one of them. So the first thing we're looking for approval on will be the approval of the order of business and the approval of additions and deletions.
See the right agenda here. Great. All right. So yes, the approval of the order of business and approval of additions and deletions. Are there any additions or deletions?
No additions or deletions have been received from the clerk's office.
I call for a motion to approve the order of business.
So moved.
A seconder?
Second.
Fantastic. Call for declarations of conflict of interest. Does any committee member here have any conflicts of interest to declare? Hearing none, we'll move on. Reports in discussion. Sharing our stories, HRM's culture and heritage priorities plan. Staff member Murnigan, would you care to present?
Absolutely, Mr. Chair. Just let me get my screen sharing. And I think I might need Elizabeth to allow me to share my screen.
Oh, sorry about that. Let me just promote you to co-host here. Then you shouldn't have a problem.
All right, and I'll just get Mr. Chair to give me the okay when he can see my shared screen.
I can see. Thank you.
Perfect. So good afternoon, members of HAC. My name is Aaron Murnihan. I'm Principal Heritage Planner with Planning and Development, and I am very pleased to finally bring you the first of several committees and council that will see this, the Culture and Heritage Priorities Plan for HRM, also known as Sharing Our Stories. This plan has been in the works since 2016. It's involved dozens of staff members, as well as outside consultants, and certainly hundreds and hundreds of members of communities across HRM as well. So I'll take you through the plan, how it was developed, and some of the actions that it proposes, and I'll have a recommendation for you at the end. Sharing Our Stories, as I mentioned, also referred to as CHPP, or the Culture and Heritage Priorities Plan, was initiated in 2016, following direction from the 2014 Regional Plan. It called for the creation of a priorities plan to direct strategic planning and investment in culture and heritage. It's the last of 5 priorities plans, which include Halifax, the Green Network Plan, the Inclusive Economic Strategy, and the Integrated Mobility Plan, that directly inform the forthcoming review of the regional municipal planning strategy. It's a comprehensive plan aimed at promoting and preserving the diverse cultural heritage of the Halifax region. It outlines a set of 44 actions that will help to build a more inclusive, diverse, and vibrant cultural community through focused investment, program development, service delivery, and ongoing community engagement. In short, the plan will support strengthening diversity, equity, and inclusion in municipal policy and programming. It'll coordinate cultural and heritage initiatives across municipal business units, and it will support long-range strategic planning and provide direction for cultural and heritage initiatives, programs, and budget decisions for the next 10 years. In terms of our community and stakeholder engagement, engagement was targeted toward stakeholders and rights holders representing mainly equity deserving communities, as well as industries that stand to benefit from or may be affected by the plan's actions, such as the professional arts community, community museums, and heritage organizations throughout the municipality. One of the main objectives of the plan is to expand and improve the representation of equity-seeking groups such as the Mi'kmaq, African Nova Scotian, Acadian and Francophone, 2S LGBTQIA+, persons with disabilities, and immigrants and newcomers. The project team also incorporated the results of previous engagement on cultural issues, such as the 2018 Nova Scotia Cultural Action Plan, RP+5, Center Plan, and the Cornwallis Task Force. Despite significant setbacks caused by COVID-19, staff held 40 meetings. We engaged 46 distinct organizations and conducted dozens of one-on-one interviews with community members. An interactive project website was also maintained and updated throughout the duration of the project, and we released a survey on the final draft plans and actions. Here's just some of the hundreds of quotes that we received through the course of engagement. Some of these are fairly powerful, and all of these quotes would have helped to inform the actions of the plan. In terms of developing the plan, it was completed in 4 distinct phases. Phase 1 included an inventory of cultural assets that was completed in partnership with the Nova Scotia Department of Communities, Culture and Heritage. The inventory includes heritage buildings and sites, landscapes of cultural significance, museums, cultural infrastructure, ethnocultural facilities, and areas of archaeological potential. Phase 2 was a review of research and past engagement activities, where HRM staff conducted background research on cultural and heritage best practices from other jurisdictions. Phase 3 entailed initial targeted engagement, including subphases A and B, and those included initial targeted engagement that was intended to build relationships, clarify HRM's role in supporting culture and heritage, and to refine previously identified community values and themes. Phase 3B included additional engagement meetings held with a variety of stakeholder groups to expand and follow up on Phase 3A. These meetings enabled staff to confirm previous feedback and fill knowledge gaps, and to confirm the plan's vision, pillars, and goals. In Phase 4, staff conducted further engagement to elicit feedback on draft actions to ensure they reflected the needs of stakeholders and rights holders. These actions covered a variety of topics, including external regulations and legislation, internal policies and workflow, and coordination with community organizations, cultural groups, and other levels of government. The plan structure was subsequently developed directly from the results of the engagement, including the plan's vision, pillars, and goals. The vision for CHPP is the overall guiding principle from which the goals and pillars of the plan are developed. It's a value statement that demonstrates the commitment of HRM to providing diverse and inclusive culture and heritage services, programming, and events. The CHPP's pillars represent the region's collective values pertaining to culture and heritage and are demonstrated in each of the plan's actions, shown here on the right. The first is stewardship, and that's about taking care of our cultural resources. Connection is about building bonds and networks between people and encouraging diverse forms of remembrance, restoration, and creation. Celebration is about expressing culture and heritage in a meaningful way. And access is about providing opportunities for everyone to participate in and enjoy culture and heritage. The actions derive directly from each of the pillars and goals, and we'll get into those in a bit more detail. A culture and heritage developmental lens was used to refine the actions of the plan and to ensure that they can become a reality in practice. So this is building on the results of the engagement. The lens served as a final test to evaluate each action's suitability. Actions were refined based on a consideration of best practice and jurisdictional scans, the results of internal consultation among HRM business units and other levels of government, and a consideration of previous council direction, existing policies, and ongoing business planning. In terms of implementing the plan, actions were organized into one of 4 categories based on how communities will be engaged in implementing the actions. These include empowering communities, co-creation, collaboration, and informing. Individual actions are then prioritized based on 4 levels, those being rapid implementation, some of which are already underway, short-term actions, those being 1 to 2 years, midterm actions being 3 to 5 years, and long-term actions being 5 to 10 years. In terms of those 4 categories that I mentioned by implementation type, we've got some explanation and some examples of actions that fall under each of those categories. So the first being empowering community. These actions are community directed, where HRM plays a supporting role. Actions include exploring the development of a regional archaeological strategy, identification and conservation of areas of historic and cultural significance in partnership with communities, and supporting community-led projects for the identification, celebration, interpretation, and protection of sites in HRM. The second category is co-creation. These are actions that are where communities are involved and where communities are involved directly from the beginning of the project, and HRM provides a supporting role. Action highlights include improving municipal heritage conservation, protection, and support for a more diverse range of cultures and time periods within the region. Development of a friendship accord with Mi'kmaq communities. Strengthening the role of the municipal archives in being stewards of our civic history, and working towards community action plans and advocating for legislative authority to do so. Third category is collaboration, where appropriate community partners or the public are given an opportunity to provide input and where HRM is collaborating closely with those communities. Highlights include development of an interpretive master plan to guide investment in commemorative and interpretive initiatives, including community signage, amending Administrative Order 46, respecting asset naming policies to promote an increased reflection of Mi'kmaq, Acadian, and African Nova Scotian history and culture, implementation of the HRM accessibility and inclusion strategy, and the creation of a public art master plan to guide the administration of HRM's public art collection. And finally, the fourth category, informing. This is where community has a limited role, where HRM is typically informing communities, and this is usually the case of previous council direction or where other plans have already outlined future initiatives and where communities have already been engaged. These highlights include the development of conservation management plans for all HRM-owned heritage properties, supporting inclusive digital access to municipal cultural and heritage assets, strengthening HRM's commitment to diversity and inclusion by embedding inclusion advisors within all business units in the municipality, and conducting a review of municipal grant programs related to culture, art, and heritage. And again, these are really just a small example of the 44 actions that fall within the plan. In terms of how the actions are actually set out in the plan itself, there is an action table that is included as one of the attachments in the final document. And up here, outlined in red, we have the implementation category that the action falls under. We have the action itself, a detailed rationale for the action or where it is derived from, the goal, pillar, prioritization level or timeline, and the lead business unit that would be responsible for implementing and then reporting back on the progress of the action. In terms of the approval process, today we are obviously at the Heritage Advisory Committee, or the first committee that gets to see this plan. It will then go directly to the Community Planning and Economic Development Standing Committee, also known as CPED. They will provide a recommendation to Regional Council, who will hold a first reading, and finally a public hearing where the document will finally be adopted. So, Mr. Chair, I have a three-part recommendation for the committee, and I'm happy to answer any questions that the committee might have. I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you. Does any members of the committee have questions for staff? Councillor Hensby?
When do you expect some further public engagement on this? Once it goes to CPED and the regional council, you said there'd be a public hearing or something, or so? What do you think the timeline is? Are we looking at February, March or April?
I would say we could possibly get to public hearing as early as February. That's what we're going to try for. So we should be at CPED within the next 2 to 3 weeks is my hope. I believe there is a special CPED meeting upcoming. We're going to try and get on that agenda. If not, then it may be January for CPED, late January for first reading, and late February for public hearing.
So when will this become a public document? You can almost say it's a public document now, as is on today's agenda. But to get to a higher profile, if the general public want to see it, are we putting out a public press release or a public relations campaign on this?
So there has been some public relations marketing related to this plan ongoing since its inception. Really, we've had a project website ongoing. We've been using corporate communications to help us advertise different phases of the plan for the public to get them involved. We also reached back out to all the stakeholders who were involved in the early engagement to let them know, we've got a draft plan. We invited them to provide additional feedback. In some cases, we also met a second time with some of those organizations as well. But really the next step in public participation is the public hearing. So we will be advertising that public hearing in the newspaper. We'll be going back out as well to all of the organizations that we originally engaged with, let them know that it's upcoming. And all of the feedback that we've received so far has been very positive. I should mention as well that we've got Eric Lusick, who's a director of strategic projects here with us as well, and my manager, Kurt Pyle.
Thank you. Lois?
Thank you. First of all, my congratulations to the multifaceted team that has brought this plan together. It's been a long time coming. I can see that. Not having had a chance to look at the plan yet, I am wondering, are there going to be any direct impacts on the program, the programs and services that the Heritage Advisory Committee provides or intersects with? Is there something we should be looking for here that will have a direct impact, or is it going to be more in the collaboration and cooperative stages?
In short, yes, there's going to be lots of potential changes coming to our heritage property bylaw, to the policies within the regional plan and secondary plans that pertain to heritage protection. But most of the actions are quite high level, and they'll be resulting in future projects. And those projects will be scoped on a case-by-case basis where HAC will actually be engaged, as will regional council, in the resourcing and the timelines and the direction of those projects. So an example would be a review of the evaluation criteria that we use to register heritage properties. That's been ongoing. We did have separate council direction to do that. One of the goals of that project is to increase the diversity of our heritage registry. So to find ways to help to register and protect sites associated with diverse communities, not just colonial white history in Halifax, but also African, Nova Scotian, Acadian, Mi'kmaq history. So that has been ongoing, and that will certainly result in amendments to bylaw H200, the heritage property bylaw, and it will certainly come with some changes to how this committee operates with regard to evaluation.
Thank you. That's very positive for the future. And again, my congratulations to all of the team members who brought this together. That's a massive delivery project.
Councillor Lovelace.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. Thanks for this, Aaron and team. I really appreciate the work that's gone into this. I do want to highlight the risk that staff identified, though. I think it's important for us to, in the very least, acknowledge, that reputational risk, the trust. Obviously, with stakeholders, currently we're under some very heavy-handed legislation from the province with Bill 225 and Bill 329. I do know that it's incumbent upon the municipality to make residents aware of the risks, and anytime we attempt to do something a little bit differently. In addition to that risk, we also have asks that have been sitting with the province of Nova Scotia for legislative change with regards to heritage and heritage landscapes for a number of years. I do think that it's important for staff to continue that recognition. It's not in this report, but I do know that when we think about sharing our stories, we're obviously looking at this historical approach of the municipality to go to the province over and over again, ask for legislative changes, consider the need for communities to own their future and own the pathway to their potential. And I think that's what sharing our stories really is doing. It's underlining that role of communities to encapsulate the history for our future. So I just wonder if you could speak a little bit to that sort of reputational risk that the municipality is confronted with when we have something like Bill 329, which could, in a sense, remove some of those features that the municipality is striving towards to ensure that we have a strong sense of our history. And obviously, when we look at community consultation continuing to be eroded within the development and planning process, I just have to reiterate the fact that we have asked the province to provide the municipality with more autonomy and authority when it comes to ensuring that we have these legislative controls for culture and cultural landscapes.
For you, Mr. Chair, to the councillor, always a challenge for municipal staff and municipal councillors to work for an order of government that is not constitutionally protected. We are a creature of the province. We're beholden to the provincial government to update legislation that we rely on every day to do our job. So that's always a bit of a challenge, especially when they aren't always receptive or don't have the same priorities. We have been working under a piece of legislation, the Heritage Property Act, that has not been updated in any substantive way since 2010. We've got probably a half dozen requests for legislative updates to that law since then, including a few that have come fairly recently. So certainly there is some risk for us not implementing some of the actions that are outlined in this plan because of legislative change that we might be relying on. But I think the benefit of the way this plan is laid out and the way the actions are drafted is that they are quite high level, and they do allow us to find alternative methods of implementation. So an example might be, the weaknesses inherent in the Heritage Property Act that allow properties to be demolished after 3 years, for instance. We can somewhat overcome that within our zoning bylaws by lowering the potential development opportunity on those properties to lower the danger that those properties are under for redevelopment, for instance. Or we can use heritage conservation districts, which have higher levels of protection, to do away with Section 18, which is that loophole that allows demolition after 3 years. So there are different tools that we can use to achieve the same ends, even if we don't necessarily always get what we need or what we might want from the province. But important to know that each of these actions, as I mentioned to Lois, will be implemented on a case-by-case basis with options presented to this committee and to council on how staff may be able to hold true to our promises to these communities. And we won't necessarily always take the same route to implement those actions, but we can certainly provide options in how we can keep our promises.
Well, thank you for that, Aaron. It sounds to me like the key word of the day is workaround. So I appreciate, I think staff are very well positioned to continue to recommend workarounds. So thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Do we have any additional comments from the group? Hearing no additional questions or comments, I have dropped the motion in the chat. Would someone care to make that motion?
I can make that motion, Mr. Chair. I move that the Heritage Advisory Committee recommend that Regional Council 1 endorse the direction contained in Sharing Our Stories, Atrium's Culture and Heritage Priorities Plan as provided in attachment A of the staff report dated October 23rd, 2023, as a framework for amending the existing regional plan and secondary planning strategies and developing new planning documents and other municipal policies and programs as may be necessary to implement the Culture and Heritage Priorities Plan direction. 2, direct the Chief Administrative Officer to provide funding options for actions contained in Sharing Your Stories, Atrium's Culture and Heritage Priorities Plan for consideration in the 2024-25 budget. And 3, direct the Chief Administrative Officer to provide progress reports every 2 years on the implementation of the plan.
Do we have a seconder?
I'll second this.
Got
Thank
Patrick.
you. So I would say I do agree with progress reports every 2 years on the implementation of the plan. However, I think as I just highlighted in my comments with Aaron, you know, we do have some significant challenges with regards to provincial legislation and changing the course of some of our work. So we may need to come back as a committee to actually request an update from staff prior to those 2 years. So I think it's just incumbent upon us as the Heritage Committee to make sure that we're aware of what those legislative changes actually do to the work that we're doing and how they could become challenges or barriers to the work that we do. So keeping that in mind, again, I'm fine with the 2 years, but I do think as a committee, we may need to actually bump that up to, 12 months or earlier. And potentially, Elizabeth, I'm thinking might need to get a staff report just to look at maybe a briefing note even and how what it is that we're recommending to council may be impeded by provincial legislation. And I don't know, Aaron, if you can speak to that, but obviously this will be owned by regional council, but I feel like we're the gatekeepers to ensure that some of the work that we're doing can continue to be implemented unimpeded.
Certainly, and there are, through you, Mr. Chair, there are a number of actions as well that pertain to other business units that work through other committees, such as the Grants Committee or the the Accessibility Committee or the Events Committee or others. So I would say that HAC is not the only gatekeeper, but certainly a lot of this plan pertains specifically to things that fall under this committee's purview. So we'll certainly be reporting back to this committee every 2 years, as we will be with CPED and with regional council. But important to note as well that a lot of the actions in the plan are reiterating previous council direction or previous commitments by the municipality through other reports or other plans, such as the Cornwallis Task Force report or the African Nova Scotia Road to Economic Prosperity, all of which are reported on separately to regional council as well. So there are quite a few checks and balances, and a lot of these actions will find their way into policy embedded within the regional plan. So there'll be lots of opportunities to come back to this committee and to council with updates on progress.
Wonderful. Thank you, Aaron. I'm very happy to see this move forward. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Is there any other discussion related to the motion on the floor? Hearing none, I call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, members of the committee.
Thanks, Aaron.
Now, moving on in our agenda, we have item 4.1.2, HR TG 2023-00871, substantial alteration to the municipally registered heritage property at 17 Banook Avenue, Dartmouth. I'd invite Elizabeth Cushing to give a presentation on that.
Thank you, Chair. Elizabeth, do you mind giving me the ability to share, please?
I just promoted you to co-host, so you should be able to
Perfect.
share.
Thank you very much. Right, I'll just have the chair confirm when you can see my screen.
I can see your screen.
Great, thank you very much. Good afternoon, Chair and members of the Heritage Advisory Committee. My name is Elizabeth Cushing, and I'm a heritage planner with Planning and Development, and I'll be presenting the 17 Banook Avenue substantial alteration application. Application was submitted by WSP on behalf of the property owner for 17 Banook Avenue in Dartmouth. This is a registered heritage property known as Banook Canoe Club, which was built in 1906. The proposal involves substantially altering the subject property to permit the replacement of the upper and lower decking from wood to precast concrete, to construct barrier-free decking, which includes the replacement of the railing, a second-story extension at the northeast corner, and replacement of vinyl windows and doors with wood. The subject property, identified in red here, is located at the intersection of Banook Avenue and Boathouse Lane along Lake Banook. So in accordance with Section 17 of the Heritage Property Act, a substantial alteration to a municipal registered heritage property requires Heritage Advisory Committee and Regional Council approval. The heritage value of Banook Canoe Club is tied to the original 1906 recreational building, which was designed by architect Herbert Gates. This includes the wood framing and wood shake cladding, the gambrel dormer with Palladian window, gable roof with protruding triangular inset, molded trim around fenestration, and view of Lake Banook. The proposed work involves two phases. The first phase, which was completed under BCOM 2022-12683, included the demolition and reconstruction of the seniors' room, which was built in 1941, and the breezeway, which was built in 1985, to complete foundation repairs to the original 1906 building. So Heritage staff requested a structural engineering report, as this work involved raising the original structure slightly so that they could access the foundation. This work was able to be completed outside of the substantial alteration process, as it did not impact any character-defining elements. The first substantial alteration proposed is to the decking. So the deck is currently constructed of wood. It is proposed to change the materials to precast concrete for accessibility and maintenance purposes. The barrier-free decking for accessibility purposes will also involve replacement of the existing metal railing with white painted metal railing in keeping with the original 1906 design, and this is based on historical imagery. The galvanized steel railing will be brush blasted and coated with epoxy and a top coat to ensure longevity. This photo, believed to be from the mid-20th century, provides some clear details of the original structure once the 1941 seniors' room was constructed. So the current final windows and doors will be replaced with wood that are in keeping with the original design, again based on historical documentation. The window openings have already been modified. However, the windows will be multiple pane, which is more in keeping with the original design. The doors will be half glazed with multiple panes, and there will also be a second-story extension at the northeast corner of the original building. So this extension will involve the removal of a portion of the original exterior wall, However, this intervention allows for the continued historic recreational use and functionality as a canoe club. The overhang at the northeast corner was not identified previously as a character-defining element of the original structure, and false wood columns along the east elevation second story will assist in reinstating the symmetry of the original design. So it's this portion here of the building that is currently pushed back slightly, so it's going to be extended a little bit just so that it's flush with the remainder of the building, which were already altered. Staff have evaluated the proposed work and advised that the proposed alterations are consistent with standards 10 through 12. The alterations include removal of previously incompatible modifications, such as the vinyl windows and doors. The vinyl windows and doors are not original, and they'll be replaced with more appropriate material and design. This includes the reinstatement of 8 light windows on the west elevation and multi-pane windows on the east. The wood doors will be half glazed with 12 lights, and all design has been informed by historical documentation. The northeast corner extension allows for the continued historic recreational use and functionality as a canoe club. And as mentioned, the overhang is not identified as a character-defining element and was already partially altered. So all alterations follow the principle of minimal intervention as identified by the standards and guidelines. The character-defining elements will not be adversely impacted by the proposed interventions and will be rehabilitated based on historical documentation. This is the third step of the substantial alteration process. So should the Heritage Advisory Committee approve, the substantial alteration will proceed to Regional Council for their review. And the following recommendation is before you today for consideration. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Do we have any discussion on the presentation?
So I just wanted to point out, since the presentation was just finished, Councillor Lovelace just messaged in the chat that she will be leaving in 5 minutes for an appointment. And it looks like we will be losing quorum after that. So we'll have to, I guess.
I'll hang on. I'll try to hang on.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you. Thanks for letting me know.
That
Right.
was very kind of you.
Well, Mr. Vice Chair, if you want me to move the motion that the Heritage Advisory Committee recommend the Regional Council approve the proposed substantial alteration to the municipal registered heritage property at 17 Bunnock Avenue, Dartmouth, as set out in the staff report dated October 17, 2023.
Thank you, Councillor Hensby. Do we have a seconder?
I do, Azuka.
Thank you. Thank you, Azuka. Do we have any discussion on the motion?
Quite an undertaking by Bunnock. I'd like to know what the total cost will be when they're all finished.
Great. Hearing no discussion, I'll call the question. All those in favor, say aye.
All right.
Aye.
Contrary
Aye.
minded? Excellent. Motion passes. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Chair and members of the committee. Have a good night.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
All right. Well, we'll move to adjourn then. Thank you all. Take
We'll
care.
need a just call for a mover. We just need a mover for adjournment.
This is
So-
Patrick. I'll move that we adjourn.
Perfect.
Perfect.
I second.
Thanks,
Excellent.
everyone.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Have a nice day.